The Toronto Raptors just got hit with a huge change. Jakob Poeltl re-signed with the team, but Fred VanVleet walks in free agency and is replaced by Dennis Schröder for $13 million a year. What is Masai Ujiri really planning for this team? Because we need some answers now. Let's get into it. Welcome everybody to Amateur Hour Sports. This is a YouTube channel dedicated to Toronto Raptors content. So if you like what you see from today's video, then make sure you're subscribed to the channel. You can help me on my road to 15,000 subscribers. But the Toronto Raptors went through some massive changes yesterday. Fortunately, Jakob Poeltl does remain with the team, but the big story of the day is Fred VanVleet leaves the team in free agency, and it is yet another player the Raptors do not get the proper value out of, as Fred VanVleet walks for free and goes to the Houston Rockets. Now, as far as the contract is concerned, there was nothing the Raptors could have done to match this contract. The Houston Rockets gave Fred VanVleet a 3-year deal worth $130 million, a max contract for Fred VanVleet, $43.3 million a year on average. So again, nothing the Raptors could have done to match that. Like, I would have been upset with a 4-year, $130 million contract, but we have to be upset with the management about how we got to this point yet again. There is too much consistency in this team, relying on our free agents to return to the team and not cashing in on the value when we have the opportunity to do so. And Fred VanVleet is just the latest in a long list of players, because we had to understand coming into the season, especially at the trade deadline, that there was a massive threat that Fred VanVleet could leave the team, especially at the trade deadline. Knowing we were on the outside of the play-in tournament picture looking in, we had to take some action, and we didn't, and it cost us yet again. In the post-championship era, things have been horribly mismanaged by Masai Ujiri and Bobby Webster as far as the assets go for this team. Kawhi Leonard and Danny Green walked for free right after the championship. Not a lot you could have done about that. At least you did get a championship out of those players. But then, Marc Gasol walks for free. Serge Ibaka walks for free. Kyle Lowry is held onto at the 2021 trade deadline just to sit out the rest of the season, essentially, when there were good offers on the table from the Sixers and from the Lakers. We get Goran, Dragic, and Achiuwa for Kyle Lowry instead of those great deals at the trade deadline. We turn Goran Dragic into Thaddeus Young, and it cost us an additional first-round pick to make happen, and a good first-round pick at that, to make that trade happen for Thaddeus Young. We get Achiuwa in the deal, who fell off a cliff last season, and Thaddeus Young, whose $8 million guarantee kicked in yesterday, was not waived. He had a partial guarantee worth $1 million, but the Raptors, there's no news on Thaddeus Young. There's no information about him getting waived. The Raptors actually held on to that contract for another year, which makes us think maybe a trade could happen. But our cap situation was already bleak, even with Fred VanVleet leaving. And now Thaddeus Young's $8 million is on the books for another year. It doesn't make any sense. And now we're at this spot where Fred VanVleet leaves for free. Of course, the good news of the day is Jakob Poeltl returns on a good deal, 4 years, $80 million. That's a good deal for the Raptors, but the production out of Jakob Poeltl last season was excellent for the Raptors, but a lot of that was down to the hyper, ultra, mega efficient pick and roll duo that him and Fred VanVleet created with each other. A big part of Jakob Poeltl's successes was the pick and roll combination that he had with Fred VanVleet. Fred VanVleet is a major loss for this team. The Raptors are already hurting in terms of who they're going to be starting for the next season. The likely starting lineup would have been VanVleet, Anunoby, Barnes, Siakam, and Poeltl. That's 3 non-shooters. Poeltl can't shoot and doesn't shoot. Barnes is not a good shooter. Siakam is an inefficient three-point shooter. OG's a good shooter, but really only off of catch and shoot. Fred VanVleet was the only guy who could hit movement three-pointers. The bench has some decent shooters, but now, Fred VanVleet, we had a great ball handler, a good defender, but an excellent help defender. We had a great playmaker. When we saw the playmaking and the hyper efficiency of the pick and roll combination with Jakob Poeltl, the pocket passes, the kickouts were great from Fred VanVleet. And we lost a lot of three-point shooting threat. Even though it was a down season shooting-wise for Fred VanVleet, percentage-wise, it was still respected, and it was still high volume that created space for other players. Again, there's nothing we could have done to match that contract. That's an insane figure offered by the Houston Rockets. But again, you have to question the management in the way they've handled their assets, trying to force something out of this core that just isn't there. And Masai Ujiri, I said, is usually not reactionary, usually doesn't panic. Right after Fred VanVleet left, he panicked. I mean, for Fred, they had a meeting with the Raptors. It seemed to have gone very well because it made the Houston Rockets upgrade their offer. But at the end of the day, we lose the player for free. And in a spot of panic, the Raptors, they settle their point guard situation quickly and sign Dennis Schröder to an over-market contract. He's given the full mid-level exception, $26 million over 2 years. So technically not $13 million a year, but he's going to be making 12.4 this year, and then the rest was 13.6 next year as the full mid-level exception, because Fred VanVleet leaving still did not give the Raptors any cap space. In fact, with Fred VanVleet's contract clean off the books, the Raptors were still over the cap. Now they're under the tax for things like the full mid-level exception. They now have access to their biannual exception and some veteran minimums, but this team needs a lot of work. Dennis Schröder is a fine player, but the role he's going to need for this team, he is a far inferior shooter than Fred VanVleet, a far inferior playmaker, a far inferior defender, and a far inferior pick and roll handler. Jakob Poeltl's numbers are going to suffer as a result. The Raptors' shooting is going to suffer greatly as a result of having a fourth non-shooter likely being implemented into the starting lineup. And with Darko, who runs the pick and roll so often, we have an inferior playmaker, as I said. The pocket passes from Dennis Schröder aren't nearly as adept as Fred VanVleet's. And what is the starting lineup even going to be? People who are happy about this, like people who wanted Fred VanVleet gone, who are desperate to see Fred VanVleet walk, they want him gone, I think this is a good thing for the team. Like, what now? How is this good? What now for this team? What is the starting lineup going to be? Because the Raptors, you might think like, okay, now it's kind of forcing their hand to go into a different direction. All signs were pointing towards this team running it back and trying to be competitive, and nothing has changed. They're going to still try to be competitive, and the fact that they move so quickly to overpay for a point guard would indicate that, yes, they still do want to run it back. So the competitiveness of the team has dropped significantly by replacing Fred VanVleet with a player who is far inferior. And there was nothing you could have done because there was no player you could have replaced him with, but you could have gotten a better one like Gabe Vincent. You're paying Dennis Schröder $13 million a year. Gabe Vincent was a better fit. He's getting $11 million a year with the Lakers now. Could we have not given Gabe Vincent a better contract to come to our team? Like, could we not have given him the full mid-level exception? That would have been much more of a better fit for the Raptors. So starting lineup, based on what it was last season, projected to be Schroder, Anunoby, Barnes, Siakam, and Poeltl. 4 non-shooters, and your only shooter is a non-movement shooter. The spacing of the team is going to be atrocious. So how do you fix that? How do you add in shooting when you don't have any cap space to sign any more players? This is what you have. You could maybe slide Gary Trent into the starting lineup, but if you do that, that likely takes away Scottie Barnes' starting role. So for the people who wanted Scottie Barnes to have a bigger role and thought that Fred VanVleet leaving would give Scottie Barnes more touches, well, now the best thing for the team to be competitive might be for Scottie Barnes to play as a sixth man for this team. So you wanted more touches and a bigger role. This might be the adverse effect that you wanted with Fred VanVleet leaving. So now maybe Dennis Schröder comes off the bench. So you slot Gary Trent into the starting line, move Scottie Barnes into the point guard position. Still, the spacing isn't great, and now you've taken away a lot of creativity and a lot of craftiness in the point guard department. This would be just maybe the best fix, having Barnes start, Gary Trent at the 2, OG at the 3, Siakam at the 4, Poeltl at the 5. This might be the best you can do with the team, but Barnes is so much more suited to playing as a forward. He's so much more suited to playing as the dribble handoff guy, the screen setter, and sometimes running the point forward sets. But having to consistently initiate the offense in the half court just does not suit Scottie Barnes' game because he doesn't apply enough pressure on the rim, he doesn't have enough self-creation yet, and he doesn't shoot the ball in jump shots well enough yet to space out the defense to give his teammates some more space to operate. So you might have to, just because you absolutely have to and have no other options, make Scottie Barnes your starting point guard, but that's really not ideal for the player, and it's really not ideal for the team. And sure, these are fixes you can you can go with, but this is a team who is out here to be competitive this season based on what we've had so far as evidence. This team is going out there to be competitive. So we shouldn't have so much of a headache trying to figure out what the starting five is going to be and how to get the best out of this team. It's just been a gross mishandling of assets over a 3-4 year period here. And I'm really starting to hit my boiling point because you can't be competitive and put this team out there. The one that I've just listed, any of these starting lineups, you can't try to be competitive and put these teams out there. Sure, the shooting and spacing helps with Grady Dick coming off the bench, Otto Porter Jr. coming off the bench, but you've lost a lot here with Fred VanVleet. And there is nothing good about a player leaving for free. And again, there wasn't anything we could have done to match that Houston offer. Full credit to Fred VanVleet. Full credit to him for being able to get that contract, going from an undrafted free agent to a max contract player. It was a massive overpay by the Houston Rockets, but just think, the amount of criticism I've seen for Fred VanVleet in the comments, in the live chat on this channel over the last year, calling him a shot chucker, calling him selfish, calling him bad for the locker room. If he was so bad at all of these things, why the hell is there a team out there willing to give him a max contract to be their team leader, to be their floor spacer, to be their floor general? I'm not saying he's worth $43 million, but the fact that a team was willing to give that to him, does that not make you think that maybe the criticism was far too harsh on the player this season? We'd be much better off giving Fred VanVleet $30 million a year for 4 years, but anything more than that would have been an overpay. The Houston Rockets were willing to do that, and as a result, the gamble the front office took at the trade deadline to trade another first-round pick, by the way, to get Jakob Poeltl, it's put us in a perilous position where maybe we have no choice but to be competitive this year because we don't have our pick. And with a guy like Siakam on your team, with players like Barnes and Anobi Poeltl, you're not going to be bad enough where that top 6 protection on your draft pick is going to come into play. It's just not. And if it does, maybe you're the 4th worst or 5th worst team in the league, which I don't think we're going to be. You'd have to get lucky in the lottery and remain in the bottom 6, or else this season is absolutely useless. Dennis Schröder is a fine player, but it's nowhere near the level of Fred VanVleet. And we overpaid and panicked to get him into the team, and it's likely going to be to start him. I can't see this team really work in any way where Dennis Schröder is not your starting point guard. And keeping Thaddeus Young on $8 million, sure, it opens up some trade opportunities, but now you are extraordinarily limited in how you can supplement this team and try to keep them competitive. There is really nothing good that comes out of Fred VanVleet walking for free. I don't know where this team is going. I don't think I've ever been more low on Masai Ujiri. This is the lowest by far I've ever felt about the front office because they are putting this team out there to fail, essentially. Like, I just can't see this team being competitive. I cannot see a reality where this team is competitive. Sure, it's a new coach, but the amount of non-shooters, the lack of talent in the guard position, we were already thin in the guard position. We don't have a backup that I can trust on a consistent basis in the point guard position. It's got to be point guard by committee. I don't know where this team is going. We need some answers. This team is not it. Something's got to change. If that's trading OG and getting the picks and the young players, so be it. If it's trading Siakam and getting the picks and young players, so be it. Because you cannot put this team out there on the court and expect it to be competitive over an 82-game season. And if you want to pivot at the deadline and say, well, it's not going well, let's now focus on the retool. Well, now OG's on an expiring contract. Siakam's on an expiring contract. Scotty Barnes about to be extension eligible. The value of these players have diminished significantly as to what they could have been over the course of the season, where we knew at the deadline things were not going to work out. I don't understand it. I'm so confused. This is a sad day. This is a sad day because I don't know where this team is going. But if it continues where it is going, I can't expect anything good to come out of it. What do you guys make of this whole situation? Where do you think this team is heading? Where do you think this team should go? Let me know your thoughts and opinions in the comments down below. You can clearly feel my frustration here. But drop a like if you did enjoy and if you agree with me. And make sure to subscribe as well to the channel for more Raptors content just like this. More moves got to come. They have to. And we'll cover them on this channel. I'll see you again next time for another video.